right. Hey everybody, assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. Pardon us for being about a minute late. That is solely on the shoulders of your host, me, Preacher Moss, the host of the SOS, the Shout Out Show. So we have a couple things that are going on. Unfortunately, our guest, Mr. Jordan Richter from Tarif Altar, will not be able to join us today. So I had to do a little bit of a juggling act. Nothing major, though. When I say nothing major, we always have topics and we all have things in the news that we want to talk about. And we've had some things happen since the last show. One of which has been the escalation of the battle between the White House and Congress over this debt ceiling. And I just really, really wanted to take some time out today to really talk about what this whole ideology is of a debt ceiling. Because, in the words of Mr. Dick Gregory, man, Allah be pleased with him, he said, white folks had debt ceilings, black folks have credit limits. So we're going to go ahead and take a little bit of time to discuss that. And the title today is Debt Ceilings, Politrix, and Surviving in America. Why did I say surviving in America? Because these days, as much as we deal with race, culture, cancellation, politics, it is definitely coming down to, can we financially support ourselves? We're in a bit of an abyss whereby we have politicians, we have governments, we have stock exchanges that are literally quietly but consistently determining our quality of life, both financially, mentally, spiritually, and in some regards, religiously. So that's what our tenor is going to be here on the Shout Out Show today. I want to give a shout out to Sister Satana, who's working a little bit in the blind today, but we're going to make this thing work. I just wanted to try some different things. You know how it is when you brother get a little information. I'm trying to stretch it out, but I'm glad everybody can tune into the show. This is going to be a really, really good show. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't go anywhere because we got a lot of information to go through. And we also have some folks we're going to give a shout out in a memorial system, in a memorial setting, if you will. Two icons recently passed. Jim Brown and Tina Turner passed, I think today or yesterday. And I'm going to talk a little bit about them because I feel like when you have icons that pass, it's a little bit more incumbent of us to talk about why they are important. Jim Brown was a childhood hero of mine. Tina Turner had two lives for me. She had Ike and Tina Turner than she had when she was Tina Turner. Both of them were significant. We're talking about almost three aspects of people who indelibly had a very, very important part of, they put their imprint, if you will, on our culture. They put a very indelible imprint on the way we look at music, the way we look at sports. And I'm going to get into that. So it won't be all debt summit today, but I want to make sure that we are clear a little bit about what this really means because we're not really even talking about it in the Muslim community. As much as we talk about finances, we are not really talking about what this debt ceiling really means. And so I want to take some time to make sure we can do that. And you know what? We'll be right back. Don't you move to the Shout Out Show, talking about debt ceilings, politics, and surviving America. We'll be right back. All right, and we're back. So let's go and get our folks in here. Let's get our family in here. We haven't seen them for a week. Want to make sure we get our Shout Out Show family, and they are already in abundance. Let's go ahead and get them in. First off, we can give a shout out to Sister Reed. Peace and blessings to you, Sister Reed. Good talking to you on Texas earlier today. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to you, your family, Brother Derek, the young warrior Jawan. Please give them my hearty salams and a hug from their brother. I hope everything is going well. All right. Next up, you know who it is. We got Sister Mary Moss, better known as Mama San, who is doing tremendous things in the rehab department, getting better, getting stronger, trying to get all flat, walking around without her walk. I'm like, what are you doing? But she's doing her thing. We appreciate you, Mom. Thank you so much for the inspiration and putting up with me in your house. All right. Shout out. Next up, my main man, Altar Rashid. Wa alaikum assalam, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Beloved, how you doing? He is our Canadian envoy, Mr. 6 o'clock, straight up, straight down, tuning in all the way from Toronto, Canada. Again, one of our ride or dies. Brother, we appreciate you coming all the way in from Canada. People you have to save, one of our first one of our long-term supporters. Thank you so much, brother. May Allah continue to bless you and guide your heart. Thank you so much. Next up. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Sister Reed says she love anime. Anime Bullock. All the way, Anime was from Tennessee, brother and sister. She was from Tennessee. And boy, she can sing. So we're going to talk about anime and the evolution and the Turner, because I had to do it today. I just had to do it today. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Thank you so much for reminding us. Sister Reed, my main man, Bilal Salahuddin, he is in the house. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace to you, my dear brother, and your sister, your queen, Sister Sonia Salahuddin Dalton. We hope everybody is on the queue that's going to be here today. We have quite a show. Quite a show. And next up, we can't forget about our executive producer, Sister Satana Whitfield, who is putting up with me because we're trying to do some different things. Thank you, Satana. It's all your fault. You introduced me to Canva. It's all your fault. I could have been doing regular stuff. Now I'm doing Canva. I got too much time on my hands. But time well spent. So appreciate you. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Okay. So let me get this thing straight. We're actually in a scenario where you have to understand that the debt ceiling will clearly do two things. One, the debt ceiling will frame for you what economy is and monetary sovereign debt is here in the United States. Is number one. And then the number two thing it's going to do, it's going to frame where you are on a socio-economic level. All right? And before we get started, give a shout out to my main man, brother Eric. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, beloved. Thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate you as always. So I was watching this thing on Instagram, and it's really, really interesting. It was a guy who was talking about not so much the debt ceiling, but he was talking about behaviors with money. And I thought about it earlier today because I was in a situation where I did something I haven't had to do in terms of finance for a long time. I actually had to use physical cash. What I mean is I actually had to go to an ATM, take money out, and pay for something. And this is important because I hadn't done it before. I've become very, very comfortable with Zelle and Apple Pay, and because I don't have to carry my wallet. I got a big old thick wallet, just so you guys know. Oh, I dropped. But I gotten comfortable to not seeing my money. And I realized that, we've been in this tailspin of us not seeing physical money. We put money in the bank, but we transact through credit cards. We transact through debit cards. We don't necessarily go to the bank. And this is highlighted by the fact that during COVID and after COVID, banks actually changed their hours. They shortened up the hours because they weren't having the foot traffic that they were having. My Bank of America closes at 4. It used to be that a bank closed at 5, not anymore. It is, it's changing. And even with the whole thing about cryptocurrency, as much as I was a big fan and still am a fan about the democratization of the fiat currency, but also with NFTs and things like that. One thing that they ushered in was this new level of behavior where we put money in a system and we don't physically touch our money. We transfer money. We are a culture that transfers money. Hold on to that thought because this ties into a bigger idea. The bigger idea, brothers and sisters, as I was watching this man on Instagram, he was talking about the debt ceiling. It occurred to me that the debt ceiling, if it's not worked out, if the limit is not increased, and we actually, let's say we default on our credit, it has international world implications. The U.S. dollar is supposed to be the strongest currency. All of a sudden, it's not. strong. This will actually go along with the fact that there are other countries that are developing different currency. In Africa, they're developing different currency. In Iran, they're trading in different currency away from the dollar. Stick with me here. I'm watching this man, a black man, if you will, talk about finances. He explained that there are three levels of financial class in America. He says that there's the poor class. He says there's the poor class, there's the middle class, and there's the rich. Poor, middle class, and rich. And he explained poor this way. He said poor are people that work strictly to make money to pay their bills. Pay attention. They work strictly to make money to pay their bills. The middle class are the ones that make money to pay off their credit in the hopes of getting more credit. I'm like, okay, follow me. He said the rich people are the ones that hold on to their money and find opportunities or create opportunities or network for opportunities to be able to turn a dollar into $100 or $100 into $10,000. And he talked about the various mindsets. Why is this important as we talk about the debt ceiling issue that's in front of us? Because, brothers and sisters, it will affect all of us. Let me tell you where this thing goes. First of all, do not be fooled about this being a crisis. This is a crisis damn near every year. Why do I say that? Because they said since 1917, when they actually developed the credit the credit debt limit, when they developed it, it was a way to make sure that America, on balance, was able to pay its bills, pay for the things it had already purchased, pay for things, and it was based on, of course, the amount of money that you had, the deficit versus the GDP, which means that we're not going to put out more money than we actually bring in. Why is this important? Because over the years, with the series of tax cuts and things like that, because it's really, really important that you understand this, and it's important that I reiterate it even to myself. America can only make money three ways, and we're going to talk about this debt ceiling. America could develop revenue through taxes, they can borrow money, or they can print more money. I'm going to say it again. Through taxation, they can bring in taxes, they can borrow money, or they can print more money. And this is how they pay their bills. Well, if anybody keeping a scorecard to keeping the receipts, one group of politicians, mainly Republicans, every year want a tax cut. Tax cut, tax cut, tax cut. But that tax cut does not permeate down to the lower class and the middle class. Therefore, it becomes even more difficult. When you have a situation of a debt ceiling and the limit is not lifted, what happens is you get inflation. It becomes very, very difficult to borrow more money. When you're not able to borrow more money, guess what happens? You're stuck in a stratus. Stick with me here. I read a report a couple years ago where they actually went to people who are in quote unquote impoverished situations. And what they did was look at their financial situation, if you will, and they figured out to a number, what number in terms of finances, dollars, would this person need to actually move from, let's say, a poverty situation to a less poverty situation to even almost middle class. They found that the number for some folks was as low, hear me now, was as low as $425. $425 a month or twice a month would move people actually out of poverty. Why is this important? Because the poor can't borrow money. Banks frown upon loaning the poor money. Now, if you can't borrow money, there are things you can't do in the American system to develop wealth. You can't buy a house. You can buy a car, but you can't buy a house. You can't rent. You can't get to the space where you have a mortgage. And even now, as we sit here, mortgages are sky high. This is going to be a big issue because right now the stock market is shuddering in its boots because they don't know which way to go in terms of understanding where America is going to get their money to pay their bills. Well, he said, what does that have to do with me and you? Preach. Satana, Bilal, Eric, JT. What's up, little brother? Wa alaikum assalam for a little bit of katu. You say, what does this have to do with us? It has to do with the fact that if you understand this has been a situation that's been out there for years. It's over 100 years, brothers and sisters. The debt ceiling is developed in 1917. I read a statistic. Well, it's not even a statistic, it's a fact. Since 1960, the debt ceiling has been raised 77 out of 90 times. Hear me now. 77 out of 90 times it's been raised. So what does that tell you? You know, what are the debt numbers today? What does America owe? We are at $31 trillion. $31 trillion. Let me give you the way they framed it. They said $1 trillion will be 635 miles above the surface of the earth. They said $31 trillion will be 21,000 miles above the earth. We're talking about if you had to print it out with $100 bills. So we're talking about all this money, but the thing that I think we need to understand is this money is not coming to us. This actually goes with the fact that, you know, banks have redlined African Americans going back to the past from being able to get loans. Therefore, we can't get loans to do businesses in our own area. Asians can, Arabs can. Everybody is redlined to make money in the black community. So now you're talking about, I may have the will, I may have the talent, but I'm not going to be able to secure the finances to do business. And this business is vital because this business in our own communities keeps the money in our communities. Otherwise, it's taxed twice. So the Asian person gets it, and then it's out of the community. The Arab gets it, it's out of the community. And it's not race, brothers and sisters. This is a well thought out plan. And so as I sit here and talk about the debt ceiling, the thing that's really, really important is it will move us further and further away from the fact that we need to have our own tangible money. That the system that we're in has lulled us to sleep, whereby if there's a credit crunch, you're not going to have access to your money the way you normally would. And what am I saying? Well, in a debt ceiling situation, what happens is the value of property goes down. The value of stocks goes down. Bonds goes down. Some of the most trusted financial instruments they have, all of a sudden, with a credit default, they're not. I mean, I had bonds when I was a kid. What was a bond? Give me $100 now. Keep the bond for 25 years. 25 years, your bond will be worth $1,000. That's the way America works. What we have now is America not working. And the whole idea of a debt ceiling is scary because we will find ourselves again not in the throes of the conversation. We're not at the table talking about this. We're looking at Joe Biden, we're looking at McCarthy, and we're scratching our head going, is anything going to happen between these two? Why am I saying that? Because these guys have been a part of this whole debt ceiling thing for years. And the back and forth is dangerous because we're sitting there. I talk about surviving in America. I'll be honest. When someone asks me, you know, why don't you still teach? Why don't you still teach? I'm going to tell you why. I'm a businessman. Teaching has a implication about opportunity costs. And what they don't tell you when you're a teacher is you're not just educating students in your classroom. You are creating culture, you are creating counterculture, and even more. You are taking on some of the attributes of parenting in your class. You hear what I said? Culture, counterculture, parenting. But the thing that teachers will talk about, and they're going to talk about even more, because believe me, on the horizon is going to be some major teacher strikes. You see them in Chicago, you see them in LA. You're going to see them in New York, you're going to see them in DC, you're going to see them all over. And here's the thing. Because this quotient of being a teacher is when you come into that job, you know you're not going to make the amount of money that you need to survive. Therefore, most teachers have gigs. They have side gigs and things like that. When I was a young teacher, guess what I was? I was a young comedian too because I had to feed myself. So let's flip back here and cover a couple things before I get too far gone. The whole idea of the debt ceiling is now a political issue. When I say it's a political issue, people push back. Just so you guys know, this should have been taken care of in 2022. What happened is the ball got kicked down the road. Now we're pushing up against June 1st. And what happened was Joe Biden, let's keep it real, Biden, when he signed paperwork to keep the government going, he thought that it would carry over and these things would mesh and everything would work. Nope. You got politicians on the other side of the aisles that are saying, ooh, this is our chance to really jam the system up. When you say jamming the system up, let's be honest. Politicians, smart ones, dumb ones, everybody knows you don't want to default on your credit. When they did this, and you don't want to lose your credit rating. When Obama was president, what happened was we defaulted. It was 2011, I believe. We defaulted. And it had major ramifications. To lose your credit rating when you're in the United States is not like Preacher Mars losing his credit rating 2 or 3 points. It's not the same. That it has global implications is really, really important because now what's going on, what happens in 2023 is a multiplier. There's a multiplier. However they're going to figure out this situation with the debt ceiling, it's a multiplier because now you're going to go into a lame duck the same as it was a lame duck in 2022. One of the things that we really should take a look at is when Biden took over office after Trump was voted out. When Biden took over office, there was a period where they needed to be establishing political policy in the context of America's budget. How do we pay our bills? Didn't happen. We had insurrections. We had the election is rigged. We're still hearing it now. Some years later, and 4 years later. And what happened was the inner workings of this process was, I want to say, ignored, tampered with, because now what's going to happen is because the Republican Party is not united the way they would like to be, everybody has an opportunity to pull the yarn out of the sweater. You know that little piece of yarn? You ever had a piece of yarn on your sweater? Like, I'm going to pull it off and the whole arm fall off. This is the situation that we're looking at now. That anything that the House is going to bring to be signed in terms of a resolution to raise the debt limit, what's going to happen is you're going to have all these people have no power, realizing that, you know what, you need my vote to pass this thing. So I don't want to say stick a fork in it because we're on to something here, and we're going to come back and talk about it. Sister Tana, we're going to hit him with a little break, and we'll be right back. Preacher Mars talking about debt ceilings, politics, and surviving America.
Sponsor an orphan, and you'll help support a vulnerable child to have the education they've always dreamed of, so they can build a brighter future. You'll be feeding a hungry stomach and a hungry mind with knowledge that will last them a lifetime. That's the power of an education. Sponsor an orphan now with Islamic Relief.
All right. Shout out to Islamic Relief. Peace and blessings, man. People are still doing good work over in Turkey. I just want to shout out to Muslim Aid actually doing a fundraiser here in the Adams area, here in Washington, D.C. So shout out to them. I also want to give a shout out to my main man, Mahmoud Abdul Rauf, who came out May 20th at Howard University, gave a very spirited speech. They had an excellent panel of, I want to say, notables. Hannah Zuberi. Wow, they had a lot of folks. Wisdom Martin from Channel 5, Fox News 5. He was there, and Mahmoud, and a guy named Jerry Bembry, who I hope I'm going to be able to bring on the show. Brother Bembry is a sports reporter for. I don't know if you're familiar with ESPN's. I think it's called Android, but it's reporting about black sports, and he did some amazing work talking about Muhammad Ali and stuff like that. And hopefully, we'll be able to get him on the show. So let me continue this line of thought because we're not going to spend all day talking about debt ceilings. But what I want people to understand is clearly, I need you to understand how America pays its bills and doesn't pay its bills. How America pays its bills and how it doesn't pay its bills. We are not part of that conversation. Many of us on this podcast, we are not part of that conversation. However, we are part of the consequences. We will feel the consequences. Because when America is not able to pay its bills in terms of taxation, in terms of borrowing money, in terms of printing more money, think about these three things. We can't do any of these things as a part of a constitutional amendment to fund the United States. We can't lower our taxes. We can't increase taxes. And damn sure can't stop paying your taxes. We can't borrow more money. At our level, if you don't pay back the money you have borrowed or committed to, then you can't get more money. We, brothers and sisters, cannot repackage debt. This is something very, very important. And I'm going to tell you why when I finish this little soliloquy. And the other part is we can't print money. Well, I mean, you can print money, but you better print a lawyer to pay to help you out because you're going to be printing some jail time. But just think about this. The United States can simply print more money. We can't do that. Borrowing, taxes, these are all things that go all the way back, and I might be a stretch here, but they go all the way back to the fact that it creates a level of, I want to say, subservience. And what I mean by that is with these type of things that I'm talking about, because we're just talking about the debt ceiling now, it creates a level of subservience because there are people who may not be able to get out of the situation that they're in and elevate and evolve to better situations, better opportunities, better education, better finances, opportunities for business. This is what this whole thing is about. Now, if the debt ceiling is not raised, then you're going to deal with higher interest rates, you're going to deal with inflation, and definitely we're going to be looking at falling back into a recession again. If that's the case, at the same time, the price of everything goes up. To quote the words of Fat Joe, today's price is not yesterday's price. We will be saying that pretty much daily until they get this thing resolved. Even out, access to money is even more difficult. When I say even more difficult, let's be honest. There are banks who don't loan money to other banks right now. It's called the labor market. But banks are not loaning, and it mirrors what Obama was talking about when the credit markets are locked up. Now these are multi-billion-dollar businesses. What does that mean to you? When the credit, it means that if they ain't got it, you don't have it, and if you do have it, they're gonna take it from you. So that is my spiel on that. So, Sister Donna, we're going to go ahead and we're going to actually flip it over. And I have some things I want to say about two people. They're my heroes. One is a musician, one's an activist, one is a activist, actor, all these things. We lost two people. And before I even get into that, before we switch, I want to make sure that I show some love to Imam Abu Kadir Alamin. He has a launch good going on. Alhamdulillah, people are giving, but I'm going to ask that we continue giving. Sister Tana, if you can, maybe you can find his launch good. I think I sent it to your WhatsApp. But if we could just post it, and he had a stroke is rather severe, but Allah has blessed him to get up, move, and start rehabbing. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Strokes are nothing to play around with. I mean, they will affect the person who has been hit with a stroke. It affect the people around them because it's just such a mental and spiritual justice. So, Abu, you are definitely in my prayers, and peace and blessings to your family as well. Okay, so Tony, you want to take a break and then we'll come back? Okay, we'll take. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm comedian Preacher Moss. I hope you're having a blessed Ramadan. Listen, I just want to take a couple of minutes of your time to talk about Olive Branch Muslim Family Services. Olive Branch Muslim Family Services represents a lot in the city of Houston. You have a lot of relief organizations throughout the country, throughout the state, but I have to say Olive Branch Muslim Family Services is one for the home team of the city of Houston. Listen, let me tell you about myself. I've always lived this idea that I'm always going to have more blessings than I'm going to have problems. And in that space, I've been able to understand that the blessings sometimes mean I can be a blessing in somebody else's life, much the same with Olive Branch Muslim Family Services. Years ago, maybe 2 years ago, we had a video and it asked the question, the profound question, imagine if it wasn't an olive branch. Not so much the organization, but the absence of compassion and mercy. Imagine if there wasn't an olive branch. Not so much a question, but a reminder of a prophetic tradition that all of our prophets who have come came to advocate for the poor and uplift the suffering. Imagine if there wasn't an olive branch. Thinking about that. OBMFS. I changed the letters from Olive Branch Muslim Family Services and dug a little deeper, thinking about that prophetic tradition. So Olive Branch Muslim Family Services is really Olive Branch's mission is family success. We need your help. While you're writing out that check, brothers and sisters, think about that. What's a world without compassion? What's good music without good instruments? What's a president that's distrustful and not honest? Okay, let me get back focused. In any event, imagine if there wasn't an olive branch. Let me remind you.
We just need help.
Imagine if there wasn't an olive branch. Muslim Family Services at your command. The people who help people have to say, we need your donations, don't delay. We all have struggles from time to time, but leaders dedicated is what you find. Before another person sheds a tear, support Olive Branch, you don't have to fear. Olive Branch Muslim Family Services. Action you can see, compassion you can feel. Sing it with me. Ooh. Ooh. All right. So let me get this straight. Okay, hold on, Sister Satan. I see what I didn't do right. I'm gonna get it right now. All right. Hey, we learning on the spot. So let me I guess I want to just take a minute to talk about Tina Turner. I really never knew about Tina Turner's life. I knew about her music when I was younger. Uh, Proud Mary left a good job in the city, and of course, you're a kid. Tina Turner had legs like model legs, but I mean, she had a rawness to her voice. Sometimes it felt like she was singing like a man. My grandmother used to say, "Why is that woman start growling like that?" Because she had a bluesy feel. She was from the South. But what I loved about Tina Turner is she survived what was an abusive situation with Ike Turner. And let's call them what they were, very combative, toxic, but they were musical savants in a time whereby they developed their own pathway. If you understand this, they developed their own pathway away from what was traditional. Now, what was traditional was Motown. And what I enjoyed about Tina Turner and those guys is during that time that everybody was going to Motown, they had a very unique sound. And that unique sound is something that they carried for quite a number of years. If you go back and look at their musical catalog is a social dynamic, speaking about things that don't. Proud Mary talks about the migration of people, African American people, to the city, looking for opportunities. Proud Mary Keep on Burning is the whole idea of a feminist, a very strong quotient of black femininity in the workplace, black femininity in culture, black femininity also in politics. This was one of the great songs that came around as a part of the Black Power movement. Because at this point in time, you don't really hear songs about black women that aren't really tied to romance. My girl, my lady, I miss you, I love you. Proud Mary was a declaration that black women had this other social dynamic that had to be displayed. And what was really important, and I will not forget this, was that while she was with Ike and Tina Turner, she led that band. She was the lead, and unapologetically, Tina Turner was a lead that a lot of people like. We talk about black female singers that are empowered. We'll talk about Beyonce. We'll talk about uh some of the other, but Tina Turner. I'm talking about an age of Shaka Khan. I'm talking about in the age of Dionne Warwick. That she was this total revolutionary with this revolutionary sound. You know, when they went on tour with the Rolling Stones, this was a black rock band in some regards that still had rhythm and blues and soul. And so for many years when I was listening to Tina Turner, um, it always reminded me that these people were pioneers. Say what you want about Ike Turner. Ike Turner was a hell of a player. He was a hell of a visionary in terms of being a band leader. Now you can say about his personality, his character, but his music was impeccable. And at the same time, so was Tina Turner, who was, despite her situation, a leader and a trailblazer for so many other women. You'll hear up and coming women, and they have a certain liberation voice. I heard a young singer, SZA, SZA, amazing singer. I heard something with Mumu Fresh, amazing singer, rapper named Rhapsody, amazing singer. I'm like, to have the breadth that they're talking about in terms of their song and their vision, and I want to say that their vocal dynamics, but also story narratives, is Tina Turner. You guys may not believe this, but I'm gonna put it out there. One of my first impressions that I really could do really, really well, you guessed it, it was Tina Turner. Her album, What's Love Got to Do with It? She had a song called Private Dancer. And this was the only imitation I could do. And I could do the arms too. And work with me now. I was 17. I wasn't Muslim. I don't want to hear all that stuff. But she had that ground. She, while the men come in these places, and the men are all the same. You don't look at their faces, and you don't know their names. Listen, it's still good today. If Tina Turner was here, she'd be, that's a very good imitation of me. Satana's like, preachers lost it. I did lose it. You know why? Because I love this woman. And when I saw the movie, What's Love Got to Do with It? She introduced the whole idea of Buddhism. I heard about it, but I didn't know about Black Buddhism. But it was just a whole thing that this woman had all these things are going around, and she found a way to center herself. As I watched Tina Turner, it was interesting because, she was in her 80s, brothers and sisters. Tina Turner was in her 80s, and she was still kicking it. And she still looked good, and she still could sing. And you know what? It was just the regalness when anything she did. When she came on stage, you knew you were in the presence of an entertainer. Not just an entertainer, but an entity. So shout out from the to the universe. Tina Turner, you were amazing. We are going to miss you. We already have a sense of loss anyway because the music is there, but the persona, the gentleness, but also the femininity, don't mess with me. And she was just a jewel. So the world lost Tina Turner, and I hope that she's doing. Somebody laughed at my Tina Turner. And while the men come in these blanks, I'm your private dancer. Dancer for money. All right, I used to do this joint all the time. Don't laugh. I got paid for that invitation. Okay. So shout out Tina Turner. Peace and blessings. Allah is the best of planners, so I'm not going to sit up and boo-hoo. But we miss her. Next up, rest in power to my main man, Jim Brown, who, brothers and sisters, people may say he was inconsistent, he had extremes, all of that. But I remember my father talking about Jim Brown when Jim Brown refused to play football. He was a leading rusher for 9 years. All Pro MVP. Nobody could tackle Jim Brown. They couldn't. He was a prototype. He was as big as a tackle, big as a linebacker. He ran everybody over. When he got in the open space, he could run. But here's the thing about Jim Brown, and I know you guys know this. As an athlete, because he was a cross athlete, because he played lacrosse and he could play basketball, he was literally Bo Jackson before Bo Jackson. If there was a professional lacrosse league that allowed black people to play back then, he would have been in it. He would have played football, lacrosse. He played basketball at Syracuse. But here's what I'm saying though. This is one of our first athletes that has this one, intellectual capacity, but two, intellectual complexity. And when I say complexity, I don't mean like he's a complex dude. It means that to move from one sport to another, Jim Brown had to be thinking about 3, 4, 5 steps or 3, 4, 5 years ahead of schedule. Where he worked in a space where the sport didn't define him. You got to understand. See, Jim Brown came before Muhammad Ali. Jim Brown came before Bill Russell. Jim Brown came before Colin Kaepernick. Even Mahmoud, he came before all of them. And framing for us what it was to be an independent, not sports person, but an independent black thinker in the 60s. You have to understand, Jim Brown, when he left football, he was at the top of his game. I repeat, he was at the top of his game. The reason he left football was he was offered a role in a movie called The Dirty Dozen. It was a war piece. It was a period piece. But he was offered a role in The Dirty Dozen. And he took the role. But what happened was they had delays in shooting with rain and all of that. And so it leaked in the football season. And the president, owner of the team, Art Modell, who actually was, he rest in peace, but he was owner of the Baltimore Ravens, my team. But he told Jim Brown that if you don't come back right now to play football, forget the movie, you're going to come back and play football. Then, Jim Brown, you were off the team. Jim Brown did something that was unexpected. He literally told the people, guess what? You can have football. You can have football. Don't need it. And he was one of the first athletes to retire at his prime. You see, when you watch athletes now, we marvel at LeBron James. Lakers got swept. It's like that. But, LeBron's talking about retirement after 20 years. That's when you don't jump so high, you don't run so fast, and your jump shot ain't as wet as it used to be. People stay in the game to make money. That's the whole advent of guaranteed contracts, and I get that. But Jim Brown said, I can make this money in acting. One of my biggest moments with Jim Brown was the work he did with comedian icon Richard Pryor. When Richard Pryor had his drug, and Richard Pryor talks about this in one of his comedy specials. I'm pretty sure it was live on Sunset Strip. But he talks about being in the throes of addiction from freebase. He was freebasing cocaine. And the only person that could talk to him was, you guessed it, Jim Brown. And Jim Brown framed this as listen, the addiction can't override the mission. Now, where does this come from? Do your homework. I know many of you know, but do your homework. But really do your homework. When Muhammad Ali decided that he was going to change his name and he was going to be a Muslim, he didn't do it alone. Malcolm X at that point was not a part of that situation. He wasn't invited to this. They had this thing called the Summit. And they brought together leading black athletes to Ernie Davis from the Green Bay Packers. Bill Russell came. Lou Alcindor, who at that point was actually Muslim. He was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I believe. Jim Brown, Bobby Seale. All these black athletes coalesced and sat down, and here's something important. They had a pro-intellectual discussion with Muhammad Ali about his beliefs. And they asked him, what is it you believe? We just want clarity because we want to support our brother. This is probably one of the most dopest things that happened in the world. And this summit is overlooked because Jim Brown also proffered the idea of an economic summit. You just heard me rail about the debt ceiling and all of that, because in our space, we don't use debt ceiling in our everyday vocabulary. It's not a part of our lexicon. We pay our bills. That's the way it sounds. Pay our bills, pay our credit cards. But Jim Brown was talking about, what do we own? And in the era of Muhammad Ali saying, I am a black Muslim, I'm no longer Cassius Clay or Cassius X, I am Muhammad Ali. He said there is economic empowerment in us framing, if you will, framing this new identity. This new identity that whiteness and white supremacy, for whatever it is, because we have these talents as actors, singers, athletes, accountants, preachers, if we are understanding that new power, he said that we are an economic force, that we can stop giving away our gifts, frame them and package them and take them to the marketplace. It's exactly what he did when he decided to do movies. James Brown did so many movies. And here's the dope part. Here's the dope part. He's one of two James Browns. You got James Brown, the Godfather of Soul, and you got Jim Brown, who's James Brown, who's the athlete. And they still manage to fill up the perspective stratospheres and bring more and more importance and ideology in terms of self-determination to the black community. This is a beautiful thing. So there's a lot of things that can be said about Jim Brown, but also it's like the same thing that can be said about Tina Turner. One of the things that I think is really, really important, and I say this with the most sincerity, is understanding that we have taken two tremendous losses. We've taken two tremendous losses. And if you throw in the loss of Wayne Shorter from the jazz world, the loss of Ahmad Jamal from the jazz world, you begin to understand that our giants, our pioneers, the people whom we stand on their shoulders, they're leaving. They're leaving, and there's a deficit. That folks are not understanding their significance because we're so tied up in all these other things. You know, we like the shiny stuff, but we're not looking at substance. You know, James Brown in the summit out in LA, they actually stopped the gang wars. Let me explain to you why that's important. That's my food coming. All right, they're a little early. It was supposed to come like 7:15. This is the first time I've ever been early. So it's time to go to commercial break. I gotta get this food. Don't you guys move. Hey, babies. Welcome to Radio WCUC, Convenient Urgent Care, home of the smart patient. This is DJ What It Do. You know what time it is. It's the top of the hour, and the request lines are open. You know what you want to hear. I know what you want to hear. Operators are waiting.
I just got to hear Don't Get the COVID.
Don't get the COVID. Put your mask back on. The Delta COVID, more contagious than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get the vaccine. You know that it can keep you safe, and your people living up in your space. Don't get the COVID. You need to wash your hands. The Delta COVID is more deadly than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get your vaccine. You know that it can keep you from dying. Don't leave your family all alone and crying. Don't get the COVID.
We
invite you to join our fight against COVID and against misinformation. It's time to listen to the doctors and trust the science. When I think of people dying that don't have to die, it makes me sad. Now is the time to be sober. Together we can make this thing over. Let's fight the COVID. Convenient urgent care, home of the smart patient.
All right, shout out everybody. Thank you so much for your patience. I had to order some food for Mama Son, Mary Moss. You know, we do our food. We Uber Eats probably too much. But today we got salmon from Mid Atlantic, so we're gonna chop that up. You hear in the back. So let me get to the wrap, and I'm gonna let everybody go. I'm gonna try and let everybody go a little bit early. Sister Satana has things to do as well as I do, and I'm not doing it just because my food arrived. I kind of am, but you know. So here's a scoop on a debt ceiling. I really, really think it's incumbent upon us to start talking about this. That we are not victims of these random, what appear to be random aspects of America balancing its checkbook, when America is balancing its checkbook on the backs of people like you and myself. Why is that important? I always say this. Why is it important? And I want to go, brothers and sisters, I don't want to do it because this system, if you will, has categorically kept people in financial slavery. It's made sure that redlining to make sure that people can't get housing and loans for housing, basically deadpanning somebody wanting to find pathway to the American dream, wealth and things like that, the ability to build wealth, is systemically stopped. And we are in a situation, we're not leaving anything for those that come behind us. These next 3 years are extremely important in the concept of, particularly, can African Americans and people of color and people who are oppressed, can you build wealth in this ecosystem? Right now, if you start looking at the tea leaves, if you will, you'll see that unemployment is down. But the amount of jobs that are out there are not jobs that give a sustainable wage. Thus, you have a gig economy. We're right now in the middle of the throes of a writer's strike. A writer's strike. Being a writer years ago, when I worked for the Lopez show, I worked on a network show, brothers and sisters. And let me tell you what that meant. It meant that they paid you for every bit of the financial tree of a show. Not the whole, I'm talking about a show you wrote on. You would get a check for being on staff or being on site for writing on the show. I did punch up. Then when the show came on, you got another check. And when it aired again, you got another. That's 3 checks. It's triple. Now you don't have that. That the Netflix and the Hulus and the Amazon Primes have framed themselves almost like the people who have framed the debt ceiling. Except they're doing it with creativity. And even more so, as much as we talk about this music and things like that, let's be honest. It's not like Tina Turner. Tina Turner and even Ike understood that there was freedom of musical expression. That there was a reason they didn't go to Motown. Because while we love and celebrate Motown, Motown did a lot of their major artists dirty. From Marvin to Diana Ross to Stevie Wonder. They did them dirty. They did them like the other companies did, the white ones. He said, don't go to those. I'll say this and I'm going to get to the close. America's in trouble. And I don't mean regular trouble. America's in trouble. Does it occur to anybody that we're arguing about a debt ceiling that has to be raised, but we can always find money for Ukraine? And I don't mean $15, $20. I'm talking about $1 billion arms support package. And yet we can't deal with the situation here on the ground And I'm talking this, and I mean this in the most sincere ways, that we sleep, that we're legitimately asleep. That if I'm telling you the debt ceiling has been raised the last night, it's 77 times out of the last time that need to be raised, it was raised 77 times. It tells you this is a pattern. That the attitude and the behavior is pathological. And the people involved are pathological. Liars and agents, understanding that their decisions don't affect them, except at the polls, but they affect us every day. So what am I going to say? Peach, what am I going to do with that? I'm going to tell you something. There was a science to keeping a couple dollars under your mattress before you had cryptocurrency and things like that. You better learn to save money on your own and not saving in these institutions, because these institutions are hurting. And when they hurt, they make sure that you hurt. Your access to money, your access to being able to go out and purchase products, your access to build, if you will, your own pathways to wealth are always going to be compromised if we're going over here dealing with people that don't know how to deal with money. $31 trillion, brothers and sisters. That's what we owe. $31 trillion. One of the persons who said, hey, don't worry about it, keep increasing it, want tax cuts, is running for president again. That's, you know who that, Doofy Trump. That's what I call him now. Doofy Trump. So, and in this thing, and then I'll wrap. Think of Jim Brown. Jim Brown in the 1960s, who had the eyesight, he had the vision to eye the understanding that the African Americans were suffering in the business spirit of doing equitable business, building wealth, pooling resources. One of the people said that one of the reasons why he was so beloved, but at the same time he was so feared, is because he understood the power of Black creativity, initiative, and drive. And he demonstrated all the way up to when he passed away. So, peace and blessings, Mr. Jim Brown. Peace and blessings to Queen Tina Turner. That's our show. Brothers and sisters, you better put some money on your mattress. It's going to be a rocky ride. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Take care.